Hello? Yes.
Jerry, y'all on air?
We get.
Hold on, sir. We're just coming on air.
Okay, I'm trying to get it. Okay, I'll hang up.
All
Okay.
right, just give us 2 minutes to get our intro in. Thank
Okay.
you. Call back.
Okay, bye-bye.
Bye-bye.
All right then. Hello. This is our Voices for People's Media, and it's an exciting show that we're having today. We want to first introduce our host. One of our hosts is Bill Snow. Bill Snow, just a little bit about yourself.
Member of Movement for Change, author of the best-selling book From the Projects to the Boardroom.
Okay. We'll probably have Rodney Jones coming on later. Henry Hawkins was on there. He's a host. I don't see him.
Henry Hawkins.
Okay.
Oh, yeah.
Joined the meeting.
He's joined the meeting. There he is, right there. Mr. Hawkins,
Yes, ma'am.
how are you doing? Would you tell me a little about yourself, Mr. Hawkins?
I'm doing good.
How are you? Tell me a little about yourself.
Okay, Henry Hawkins, Mayor Town of Century, also pastor of a church in Flemington, Alabama.
Okay, well, thank you very much. So we're doing the show a little differently today. We normally have
Hello.
our hot topics come on at first, but now since we have a special guest and we have the people are calling us off the hook just so they can talk to this lady here. So we're going to do the show. We're so glad to have her. And at this time, what we want to do is I want to introduce myself and Jerry. This is Jerry McIntosh and Carol McIntosh, the host of Our Voices People's Media. And before we let her talk, if you don't mind, Dr. Wells, we want to just get some background information. You know, a lot of people are kind of hesitant to take the vaccine. And we can understand why. And I did some research, and there's a couple of things that we need to validate the African American community as far as why they are reluctant to take the vaccine. And then after we talk about that, we're going to have the pleasure to talk to Dr. Wells in regards to her expertise in the information that she's going to give us in regards to the vaccine and the virus, and you all will have a chance to ask your questions as well. So, Jerry,
we'll let her introduce herself.
She'll introduce herself at that time because we want you all to want her to have enough time to really expound that. But Jerry, talk about the, this is the first thing they talk about, the Tuskegee syphilis program or whatever they did. Would you talk a little bit about that?
In 1932, I'll just read some of them. In 1932, the Public Health Service worked with the Tuskegee Institute, began a study to record the natural history of syphilis in hope of justifying treatment program for Blacks. It was called the Tuskegee Study of Untreated Syphilis in the Negro Male. The study initially involved 600 Black men, 399 with syphilis, 201 who did not have the disease. The study was conducted without the benefit of patient-informed consent. Researchers told the men they were being treated for bad blood, a local term used to describe several ailments, include syphilis, anemia, fatigue. In truth, they did not receive the proper treatment needed to cure their illness. In exchange for taking part in the study, the men received free medical exams, free meals, and burial insurance, although originally projected to last 6 months. The study actually went on for 40 years. So we just want to give some background in why people are reluctant to take the vaccine. And it's so many more things that has happened that caused, especially from the African American community, to be reluctant, and which is rightfully so. But by the same token, the medical field need to validate these things that has happened in the past, so that people can say, oh, they can justify making sure people take these vaccines in the future, so that so many people won't end up dying as a result or because of fear.
Well, we're going to do just a couple of instances. Everybody know about the Tuskegee experiment, but do they know about the in 1951 Henrietta Lacks cancer cells were taken without her knowledge, and that her contribution to this day has been considered. As a matter of fact, today on the news, they've recognized her with a congressional bill today. And so I thought that was awesome, but why did it take so long? But they took her blood. Let's see, it says the contribution. They took her blood and her cells, and without her knowledge, she had several cancers. And then you have Marion Sims, who was called the founding father of genealogy. What did he do? Black women were 2.5 times more likely to die in childbirth than white women. So Black women had a problem with childbirth. And then you had, we're going pretty fast with some of this, but then you had the polio vaccine that was introduced in 1955. Outbreaks and diseases were primarily found in poor and often Black communities. And so you had that problem. And Bill, there's one in regards to 7,000 young boys.
Yes. Modern eugenics, better known as human genetic engineering, changes or removes genes to prevent diseases, cure diseases, or improve your body in some significant way. The potential health benefits of human gene therapy are staggering, since many devastating or life-threatening illnesses could be cured. But modern genetic engineering also comes with a potential cost. As technology advances, people could routinely weed out what they considered undesirable traits in the offspring. Genetic testing already allows parents to identify some diseases in their children in the uterus, which could cause them to terminate the pregnancy. Now, more than 7,000 boys, 95% from underprivileged Negro families, were used as guinea pigs in a 3-year experiment that could have branded them as latent criminals for life, according to a study that appeared in the now defunct Washington Daily News. Funded by the National Institute of Health, the project extracted blood samples to test some, making them XYY males instead of normal XY males. This was done because a theory which remains unproven to this day that holds that male with the extra Y chromosome are more likely to become criminals later in life. This genetic testing was done without the parents' knowledge or consent, according to the newspaper article. Although men with XYY chromosomes tend to be taller than norm, it has not been demonstrated to cause any type of psychological abnormality. A similar experiment was conducted with another 6,000 men, approximately 90 or 85% of whom were Black, housed in Maryland state institutions for abandoned or delinquent children. According to the Washington Daily News, the children the confidentiality was not protected, and the blood test results were passed on to courts as they saw fit.
Then we got about a couple more, but we're not going to go into details. And I think on another show, we need to go into each one of them a little more deeper than what we are, so they can understand. And African Americans really need to be validated as far as these things happen in the United States, and we need to. I think the United States need to own up to it. But then you have forced sterilizations from 1909 to 1979. Around 20,000 sterilizations occurred in California state mental institutions under the guise of protecting society from the offspring of people with mental illness. You had the 1.7 million soldiers in the Persian Gulf with this Persian Gulf vaccine. Were you familiar with that, Bill?
Yes, vaguely, somewhat. Yes, ma'am.
Okay. And then lastly, that we're going to discuss briefly about radiologists at the University of Cincinnati led an experiment exposing 88 cancer patients for mostly black to whole body radiation, even though this sort of treatment had already been pretty well discredited for the types of cancer these patients had. So briefly, we tried to go over a little bit with you as far as why the African American community is hesitant on taking this vaccine. And we discussed it on Our Voices, we discussed it on our other programs, Community Conversations. You've heard from us. We felt that we needed someone, an expert, to come on and talk to our viewers in regard to the situation at hand. And they'll have a chance to ask the questions. Well, we got that person, and we're honored to have her. We have Dr. Kelly Tice Wells with us today. And if you can see here, she is from Florida Blue, is that correct?
Yes, I am the Senior Medical Director for Medical Affairs at Florida Blue. That's correct.
Okay, would you tell us a little about yourself? Just give us a little bio and give the people a little background on your past and how you got to where you are. I know that someone texted me and told me they knew you and that if you were on the show, then they trusted what you had to say, and they told everybody else. She said she was texting everybody to tell them to come watch the show, and she evidently did. We had calls off the chain here. So tell us a little about yourself.
Hold on a minute.
Well, I think the most important thing I should say at the outset is that I am a product of that community. And I'm also the daughter of Ralph and Dolores Tice, and we actually ended up in Pensacola because my father retired there. It was his last duty station, and so from the time I was 10 to the time I graduated from Escambia High School, that was home. My parents still live in that community, as does my brother and my nephew. So I'm a product of that community. And the reason that I wanted to have the chance to speak today was because that community still means so much to me. After leaving Pensacola, however, I went to Florida A&M University, and after graduating, finishing my time as a Rattler, I actually then went to med school at the University of Florida College of Medicine. I trained as a family physician in Jacksonville at St. Vincent's Family Practice Residency, and committed actually at that time to work in underserved communities through the bulk of my career, and I've done that. I had my very first job out of residency at the Duval County Health Department, and completed an almost 18-year career as a public health physician. I worked at the Duval County Health Department for a period of time. I worked at the Escambia County Health Department for a period of time, as well as spending almost 6 years as the director of the Florida Department of Health in Duval County when I returned about 8 years ago. So really have had a good career, I think, that has allowed me to learn a lot about the public health system. I've learned a great deal about communicable disease and how it spreads in our communities and what is necessary for us to combat it. I also always cultivated and maintained an interest in addressing and solving health disparities. Very early in my medical career, I recognized the disparity that existed between minorities and non-minorities, and wanted to step in to solve that. As a matter of fact, wanted to be equipped to solve that. So I, throughout my career, have been asking questions about what is it that causes Blacks and other minorities to have higher burdens of illness than other populations have had. And I was able to identify a few things, right? It's information, right? It's mistrust, which we have, you've talked a bit about the sources of that mistrust. And then it's access. And access takes many faces. And those of us who have done work in the area of health disparities have talked for years about what it takes to get into care. things that keep us out of care are things like a lack of diversity in your physician provider, right? You can't find a doc who looks like you, right? And it takes something to try to build rapport and trust with a physician who doesn't look like you or have your or similar background. Access can be because of your financial situation, your job situation. Many of us have had issues where if you don't go to work, you don't get paid. Right. So being able to access health services and still keep a roof over your head is, can be quite challenging. But I think there's also the access that is limited by the experiences you have in the health setting. Right. So once if you prioritize your health and you've connected with a physician or clinician and you get into the office and find that they're condescending or discriminatory or downright rude or appear inept or whatever it is, those things will drive us out of care as well. And so one of the reasons that I've taken on the health disparities work in particular is because I know that there are solutions that need to be developed to improve some of those issues. But it starts, one, with having enough physicians of color who can sit in seats like this and have the necessary conversations. But two, it also takes really empowering you and your audience as healthcare consumers to ask the right questions and to be knowledgeable about what they should expect in the care setting, right? So it takes all of us. So more than you hearing what you'll hear from me tonight, hopefully, it's what will you do next? Will you become a force multiplier? Will you talk to your neighbor and your family members and share the fact that you've learned? Will you point the folks in your circle to the proper sources of information about this? Or will we sit and just perpetuate some of the misconceptions that keep us separate from and outside of care? And I hope that's the dialogue that we'll have tonight. And that's frankly that's the reason I wanted to be a part of this conversation. You have to have somebody who's willing to sort of sit down with you and have the difficult conversations. And when I was in practice, I always said to my patients, if I don't know, I'm going to tell you, right? I am humble enough to say to you, I don't know, rather than to misrepresent anything. And when I know, you'll know, because that's part of having a relationship. Because guess what? It's your healthcare. It's not my healthcare, right? So my job is to empower you to get what you need from this system. So I'm thrilled to be here. I'm so glad for the invitation. I'm really looking forward to the conversation.
Well, we're going to get right to some questions because the phone is ringing.
Yeah.
We want this is what we want for the people to be able to ask questions.
You on the air, caller? Go ahead. Go ahead, caller. Can you hear?
While we're waiting, just getting a call on the air. I mean, they've called, try to get them there. But the question I want to ask you is, as a health provider, what is your opinion in regards to, first, the virus from a health care point of view, and then also share with us in regards to the vaccine itself? In between your speaking, you probably have calls, so we'll break it, and hopefully that won't stop you from your thinking process. But can you talk about those two things, the virus itself?
Yes.
You
were going to ask the question. This is Jerry McIntosh with our voices.
Okay.
Hello?
Hello?
Yeah, you were going to ask the question? You have a question?
No, I was just here to listen to it.
Oh, okay. Well, let me get you. Is this your cell number?
No, it's not.
Oh, yeah. Okay, well, we call, this is a call-in number here, so you have to go to my Facebook page. Let me get. Okay. All right.
Thank you for calling.
Okay.
Can you speak to that for us, Ms. Wells, Dr. Wells?
Sure, I'd be glad to. So in terms of the virus, right? So the coronavirus is a family of viruses, but the specific one that causes COVID-19, it is a respiratory virus. If you've had a cold, you have had a type of coronavirus infection. This one, however, is obviously much more severe. And in addition to the respiratory symptoms it tends to cause, it also causes a great deal of inflammation in the body. And that shows up in a number of ways, and I'll talk about that in just a moment. When you become exposed to this virus, you actually have to breathe in or come in contact with droplets that contain the virus. So someone who's infected coughs, sneezes, speaks loudly, sings, anything that brings those droplets out into the air, and you inhale them, they land in your nasal passages. And over the course of anywhere from two days to 2 weeks, that virus begins to multiply in your nasal passages and can lead to infection. The reason I spend time on the transmission in terms of how you actually get infected and how those who are infected can put virus into the air is I hope to illustrate the importance of using a mask, right? If you are infected and don't have symptoms, so you've got virus in your nose, in your throat, or in your lungs, when you sing, when you yell, when you laugh, right? When you cough, when you sneeze, you can release those droplets into the air. I think we think that we can only become infected from folks who appear ill. And in fact, many places that we go now, right, we find that people are checking temperatures. Having an elevated temperature is a very late finding with this infection. In fact, folks can spread it for a couple of days before they develop a fever. And some people can have the entire infection and not have much in the way of symptoms at all, right? And so what makes this challenging for us is I think we're waiting for folks to look ill and then we'll stay away from them. And that's exactly how we find ourselves exposed, because you're likely exposed to someone who didn't have much in the way of symptoms. So that's the first thing. In terms of our community in particular, if you've done work related to health disparities, what it means with chronic disease is that if you have diabetes, if you have high blood pressure, if you have asthma, and you're Black or Hispanic, the likelihood that your condition is worse than someone who is not a minority is significant. We tend to have a high blood pressure that is higher, more likely to be out of control. We tend to have diabetes that's more out of control, so our blood sugars are higher, right? And what I've been saying for folks over the last 10 months is do whatever you can to be sure that if you get exposed to COVID-19, it finds you in your best state of health. That means if you hadn't been taking care of your blood pressure, if you hadn't been watching your blood sugars, this is the time to get it together, because we learned very early on, as folks started to get exposed to this virus, that diabetes that was out of control, for instance, was one of the things that contributed greatly to poor outcomes with this disease. Same thing with high blood pressure, right? And so those things I've been saying for years to folks, you tell me, oh no, my blood pressure's always this high. That's normal for me. No, it's not. And it's never been, right? It's something we've accepted about ourselves. But I would always challenge folks, no, go back to your doctor and be sure that your blood pressure is under control. And then let's talk about what it's going to take to get there. Well, our inability to do that, for whatever reason, has put us at risk of having worse disease. And then the things that have long plagued us in terms of our inability to have the same access to resources that those who are in the majority have, right? So just as you were talking about the multiple things that have been plagued our communities as it relates to health and healthcare research, we could have a similar conversation about how Blacks have been disenfranchised by their inability to get jobs and loans and buy homes and create their own financial independence. It's a similar story, right? We've told the health story today, but there's a similar socioeconomic story, right? Well, that same thing then leads to a lot of the other kind of contributing factors to care, and particularly the financial issues. It was Blacks in large part that couldn't stay home when we said lockdown, right? That didn't mean anything to a lot of us who were working in healthcare or in retail or in hospitality, right? We went to work. And so your ability to stay home and keep yourself safe, that didn't apply to us, right? So we were overexposed, and in many cases, our chronic illnesses made us more likely to have a worsened outcome. And so that shows up in the data that we're seeing, right? The cases and the facts that Blacks are 4 times more as likely to be hospitalized, almost 3 times as likely to die if they get this infection. And it is those numbers and the fact that I can talk to colleagues who know no one who's been hospitalized or certainly has passed away with the virus. And I know several people, right? I have friends who lost people. And so that's the position I come from when we start talking about the vaccine and whether or not we can use this to keep ourselves safe. Yes, sir.
We have a caller, Dr. Wells, who want to ask. Go ahead, caller, ask your question.
Yeah, like some of the stuff that like y'all talking about, like I don't really know all the history, so I think I might be like more scared now. You know what I'm saying? Now that I hear all the stuff that they did to Black people, I knew about Tuskegee, but I didn't know about the other stuff. So I want to know from the doctor, like, do she plan to take the medicine, and if so, like, why should Black people trust the vaccine?
Okay, good. Thank you.
Thank you for your call.
Did you hear?
Yep, that's the right question. You know, I think that we certainly run the risk of doing ourselves a disservice if we focus only on where our country has gotten it wrong and don't kind of set the stage for how we can, based on what we know about this vaccine, how we can move forward and be sure that we have appropriate access. So let me say this. I think that, you know, the way I tend to approach things is always to have looked at it, read it, learned it for myself. I am never, you know, as a physician, I was never the first person on the bandwagon. You know, if there was something new that was coming down the pipe, like, I'm going to give that a minute. Let me see, you know, let me watch, let me learn. Right. And I just think that that's a good way to play, you know, and I think that in this instance, as we begin to work toward a vaccine, I started very early, months and months ago, asking the questions that I knew I needed to ask for you. And that is, hey, what does it mean that they're putting this thing together so quickly? You know, what is there anything lost in that rush to production? Let me figure that out. So I've been listening and watching the companies that have been working at this, right? And what I know is Pfizer didn't get any of that Operation Warp Speed money. Moderna, who's making the second vaccine, did. I listened to podcasts and tried to really learn about the researchers who were working on this to try to understand whether the science was different. I asked questions about minority enrollment in the studies as we were getting this ready, you know, because don't be experimenting on me, right? So how are you even getting minorities into these studies? And is the number going to be enough for it to matter to me? And I can tell you that Pfizer did an extraordinary job. They had 10,000 minorities in their study. And it represented folks, it included folks with various chronic illnesses. And, you know, so they did a pretty good job. And then the other question I asked was, what is it that we might learn once the vaccine hits the market that we wouldn't see necessarily in a study? And so there are a few groups of people that we have to pay attention to, right? There weren't lots of kids, right? So the vaccine, both of them are going to be indicated for Pfizer's 16 and up, and Moderna is 18 and older. And then no pregnant women were allowed in either study, and though there were a few women who became pregnant during the course of some of those studies with no obvious issues there. And then, you know, we have to realize if we do something with 40,000 people, let's say, and then we roll it out to 6 million, we're going to see some side effects, some, you know, passing out, some complications. We're going to see all of those things. And so we have to, I think, approach it in a very strategic and intentional way. Number one, we know that something needs to happen so that we can be protected. I hadn't seen my mom and dad in a long time, right? And I think all of us are missing our loved ones. Some of us lost loved ones and didn't get to say goodbye. And we don't want to spend another year doing that. Like that we've got to fix. Number two, there are those of us who are exposed daily and need some measure of protection. And we need to be sure that we don't allow our reluctance to keep us at risk. So the caller asked, am I going to take it? When the vaccine is available to me, the answer to that is yes. If I were actively involved in patient care, if I were an ER physician and I was, you know, continually exposed, if I worked in an ICU, I would have had it already. Okay. And I will say that, as I have said, when questioned about vaccines year in and year out, you know, every year as I talk to parents about, you know, getting their kids immunized, I could tell them the thing I can tell you that should move you more than anything else I might say today is that all my kids have been immunized. And hopefully we will get to the point where I can say to you, I've had my COVID vaccine, because it's the thing I can do to be sure that we shift out of this. Because here's what's going to happen, right? All the mistrust notwithstanding, all the historical challenges notwithstanding, when we get to 2021 and the bulk of the population has received this vaccine and majority America can go back to work, it won't be news anymore. And we will continue to be at risk. Just like it hadn't been news that our diabetes is worse and we end up in renal failure more often and we have more strokes and more heart attacks and lose limbs. Just like the idea that pregnant women, Black women of color, are more likely to have complications, and that my child, my firstborn, had less opportunity to see his first birthday than a child had if it had been born to an 18-year-old white woman who had not completed high school. Same chance, right? Those things stop being news once the majority interests are taken care of. If history has taught us anything else, it has taught us that. So while the door's open, and while we as Black Americans can step through that door and say, tell me, majority America, tell me healthcare system, why this should be the thing I should say yes to, then we've got to be there. Because I'm telling you, the tide's going to shift. The risk to those who have the platform is going to be reduced because they will have gotten access to a vaccine. And we will still be in our communities wondering if we should trust while we continue to lose loved ones and we continue to see it impact our lives, our family members. And that's what I want to prevent. Let's talk about it. You might not figure it out today. I might not convince you today, but let's have a conversation next week if we need to, right? Let's keep moving.
That's it. Do they actually, in your field, do they ask the African American doctors and nurses their opinion as to how they can change the tide? Does the medical field understand that they have to go to you? You know, understanding that when that the show, the response that we received because there was a trusted person in the community, not all these other people out there, but someone that they can talk to that like them. Have they reached out to doctors and nurses and other health people in regards to getting that pace?
So I can tell you a couple of things. I know that minority physicians who are in primary care practices in particular were sought out in order to connect with the research trials that were going on, in order to try to get their patients into the trials. In fact, at least one of the manufacturers specifically offered minority physicians the opportunity to be investigators, to actually do some of the research themselves in order to really open that door and ensure access to minorities. I think that as you might expect in many large institutions, healthcare and medical education being similar, it depends on where you are, right? So there's some facilities, some areas where there is an appetite and an understanding of the value of the minority medical professional, and then there are others where they don't see me, right? I look like the nursing student, maybe, right? So it runs the gamut. But I can tell you what is happening. Black physicians are aware, and they are leaning into this in a big way. And so I would challenge you on your social media pages, find the Black physician organizations, because we're there. The National Medical Association, which is the national platform given to physicians of color, stepped out in September and began pulling together information and resources and developing a position on the COVID vaccine. So we are there, and we are ensuring as a collective that the decision makers know that we're here. So, it becomes less about waiting for them to come find us and ask us what we think, but instead, just as the NAACP has leaned in and said, hey, this is what we feel like needs to happen related to racism and the fact that it's a public health crisis, Black physician organizations did the exact same thing for the medical institutions as it relates to the COVID vaccine. And so you'll find that there's some resources out there and some work that's already being done because we knew it was coming. And for me, there's such an urgency to this that, I've been tapping on people. I've been saying, hey, Florida Blue, I get it. We're gonna be in position to help our members, but before they come to us, let's start thinking about what we need to say to our minority communities so that we can be ready. Because guess what? We don't get our information the same way everyone does, right? And so how many of you ever been to FloridaBlue.com? Not many, right? We get our information through different channels. And one of the ways we do that is we find a trusted thought leader with whom we feel like we've got a relationship, right? And then we listen. So my job is to be that, and then make sure that every community around our state also has a meet that will sit in conversation and meet people where they are and begin to talk through their concerns. That's what has to happen. That's what's required.
Mm-hmm. We're talking with Dr. Kelly Tice Wells, MD. We are so happy to have her with us this evening. If you are watching the show, share and like the show and let your friends know that she's on with us, addressing this the virus and the vaccine. So and on that,
if you have any questions,
yeah.
850-206-3776. If you have any questions for her. I want to ask you this, Dr. Wells. Did the terminology Operation Warp Speed, do you think that really kind of, Blacks are different type of people. They hear this warp speed.
Wait a minute.
You skip a step. Do you think that kind of hindered the Blacks from really jumping into this?
I mean, if I'm 100% transparent, I didn't love it either. Like go ahead and let mine take the regular time, and that way I can be sure you didn't cut any of those important scientific corners, right? But here's what's good about that. I think that certainly what COVID has done for us is it has allowed us to really make use of some tools that existed that I think we were kind of waiting to really apply effectively. We've learned to do a lot of things. You ask my dad, he's had virtual healthcare visits for the first time ever, right? We've all kind of, we're on Zoom right now, right? And we've learned a lot. And I think we've proven to ourselves that there are some things that we could do that we didn't know that we could, right? And so that's a good thing. And I think in the scientific community, what we don't do a great job of is telling you what it is we've gained, right? So we don't sell ourselves, right? The scientists that are doing this work are where you want them to be. They're head down in the lab, looking at the science. You know what? They tried this on this particular disease before. Wait, it might work over here. Like they are doing what they're doing. They don't stop to say, you know, this is our rationale, this is our approach. Even though it's called Operation Warp Speed, we're actually looking at technology that we've been studying for years. This is things that they started to think about with Ebola, okay, and other illnesses. So the while it's new in terms of vaccine technology, it is something that scientists that are doing this work are well versed in. You know, and in truth, if we've learned anything, it's your words really matter, right? And often we make choices about, you know, the name of a thing without recognizing the implications, you know. So now we actually spend time having conversation that you understand that name didn't come from science, right? That name came from national leadership. And the other thing is, once something is developed, right, and the preliminary study work has been done, then it goes to the FDA for evaluation. So, you know, the timeline that we walked down was study was complete. Oh, it looks good. Now we're going to send the safety data to the FDA, and they're going to look at it. And that's the first question: is it safe? Right. And so that was the first assessment that was done by the FDA, and then the next thing they looked at was, does it work? Okay, and if those two things are met, then the FDA can issue what it has done in the last 2 weeks for the two vaccines, an emergency use authorization. Now, has the FDA fully approved any vaccine? No. But guess what? The FDA hasn't fully approved any of the COVID tests that are out there, because full approval from the FDA takes a long time. We need long-range safety data. We have to follow and track people for a long time. So the emergency use authorization that is issued is based on the committee meeting, reviewing all the data, and then having a conversation, right, and taking a vote. They made all of all of those conversations were public. I have colleagues who watched the entire conversation. So that all the question and answers, all the review of the data, right? That wasn't done behind closed doors, and it allowed the medical community to understand the kinds of things that were in play. And I think that's an important thing, okay? And then once you move on the other side of this, any vaccine is immediately entered into a registry. And any adverse events, any side effects, any troubles, anything are tracked long range. If you have a 6-month-old who's due, you know, it's 6-month immunizations, and your child has, you know, a reaction that you think is attributable to that particular vaccine, you can call the vaccine hotline today on that vaccine that's probably been out for, you know, 20 years, 30 years, right? We never stop collecting data about things like this, because we understand that we don't know everything, and it's impossible to know everything. What we've got to recognize, though, is that for the length of time that our mistrust of the system has kept us out of the research realm, we actually prevent ourselves from having an understanding of how something might impact us. So I challenge my physician colleagues to get into the research realm. You need to be there, your face needs to be there, so that you can pull some minority patients into some of these research studies. That needs to happen. And then we need to be willing to ask ourselves the tough questions when we have the opportunity to make decisions like this. Like the way to get this wrong is to make assumptions and not step forward to try to get your questions or your concerns validated. That's the only way to get this wrong, right? it is not to lean into if you lean into your doc and say, hey, I don't feel right, help me understand. You know, you get to do that. That's being a good health consumer. You know, Dr. Leon Haley, who is the CEO and the head of UF Health here in Jacksonville. He is a Black man who he was an emergency room physician. He worked and led emergency medicine at Grady Hospital in Atlanta for years. I'm thrilled. I'm proud to call him a colleague. He was the first person in Jacksonville to get this immunization. And he was questioned the other night. I was on a panel with him, and somebody said, you know, are the folks at UF Health, you know, used to be Shands Hospital in Jacksonville, you know, are they required to get the vaccine? No, we are not mandating the vaccine for our health employees, because we know that many of them are still reluctant. What we are doing is we're continuing to have town halls with them. We're continuing to have webinars with them. We're continuing the conversation, because he'd rather have a population of employees, many of whom are Black. He'd rather have a population of employees who feel like they got their questions answered, like they understood what the potential side effects could be, and they were prepared to say yes. And that's a setting where every day they're taking care of folks who have COVID. I think that's key. Like, we have to be willing to let folks just sort of, you know, you got to sit down in it a little bit and get comfortable. Like, and maybe that won't happen today. Maybe it won't happen tomorrow, but we have to open the conversation. That's the most important thing.
Dr. Wells, I think that is an awesome analysis of the Shands situation over in Jacksonville. But our live Facebook stream, Ada M. Fields, Jazzy Red Talk Show out of Mobile, Alabama. How would you reply to this statement? They're paying $740 here to take this vaccine. 3 of my older friends got the letter. I will not take the money or the shot, nor the shot. The first polio vaccine did not work. It took a year to make a healthy kid sick, and it killed most of the kids in the iron lung. The name of the doctor was Jonas Salk.
So I think that's one of the things, and I can't really speak to the paying to take the vaccine. Like, we have to, certainly that raises a question in my mind. I think we at Florida Blue we have a few concerns. The one is that this is a series of 2 vaccines, not just one, right? And so we want to be sure that folks see their way to completing the series so that they are in fact protected. And when you talk about vaccines and the failure of a vaccine to work, we've certainly come a long way since Jonas Salk. And I can tell you that with this particular vaccine and how it is made, the fact that it offers 95 to maybe higher than that of those that receive the vaccine protection is extraordinary, but it's attributable to the fact that this vaccine is actually made differently than others. Okay, with flu vaccine, not made the same way. And for that reason, you don't get as much protection. What this does is actually allow your system to make additional copies of a little piece of the surface of the coronavirus. The picture that you see, so that outer coating of the virus is the thing your body makes antibodies to, right? And so the way this mRNA virus is made, it actually causes your body, it's as if, I've talked to the young people now, it's as if you used a USB port, a thumb drive, right? Plug it into your computer, right? It doesn't change your computer, but it can cause your computer to kind of run a different program, okay? So it doesn't change your DNA, doesn't change your body, right? But it does cause your body to produce more of a thing. That thing is what your body sees and builds antibody to. It's actually an extraordinary technology that, as I said, had been studied for years with other diseases, that they found this particular virus, because of how it's made and how it affects your system, as the perfect vehicle to use this now well-known technology. So, you have to be careful comparing this type of vaccine to a much older, more antiquated vaccine. With polio in particular, we started with, we've actually had a few iterations of polio vaccines, and ended up with an oral, right? There's an injectable. And so that science changed a little bit as we learned. And I think that's an important call out. One of the things that we can look into that perhaps we can do some teaching on, and with the additional materials I'd be glad to share, is what it really kind of understanding what an mRNA vaccine is, because that science, I think, is important for folks to understand. The other thing that we have to really kind of pay attention to is that all of this feels hard. It's all new. I'm not a virologist. I'm a family doctor. And so the amount of learning we've all had to do in the course of the last 10 months is just extraordinary. And so I won't, insult anyone's intelligence by acting as if this is easy to get your arms around. It isn't. But I think we also have to be clear about what it is we need to learn about, and the differences between, maybe some historical failures and what's on the table now. Again, I'd love to, maybe you all can investigate this a little bit, being paid for the vaccine. Like I want to understand that a bit more, because, the source of that is a little troubling. The vaccine is currently being provided through federal mandates and funding, so there's no cost for the vaccine to any of the hospitals in the area that are going to get supplies in the coming weeks. So I'm not sure I understand that piece of it. So that raises an alarm bell for me.
Right, that's what I'm saying. So if they receive a letter saying it's going to cost so much money, they should be aware of that, and some alarm bells should go off, because you're saying the vaccine is free.
No. I don't think Ms. Ada Fields is saying that the companies, the medical people scientists are paying people. They're saying I think she's saying that the people are being paid to take the vaccine.
Right. So that's I don't know where that would come from, or why would we be doing something like that. So I would ask that question, and it's certainly not a way to, it's not a great strategy. Like that's not how I want you to learn to trust the vaccine.
Absolutely.
So I don't understand the motivation for that. So can we maybe just take one more question?
I have a question, and it probably is dealing with that second dose. I'm sure everybody wants to know. You have 2 doses. The first one I've seen on TV, I can take the vaccine, and I asked them, "How do you feel?" And they said, "Fine. I don't have kind of side effects." But from what I understand, is the side effects mostly comes from the second vaccine. The second series. So what do you tell us about that? And imagine that they're saying that it might take 4 to 48 hours sometimes for people to get over side effects that might have. A lot of Black people don't have that time. Don't have 24 hours.
Exactly.
I got a headache. I'm gonna lay down. And so I think that's a problem now for me. So just address those doses and side effects, and what can they do if they're worried about not being able to go to work the next day because of they're telling you that they don't have.
Sure. So the excellent questions, and let me say this. Me to my community, we have failed to adequately educate members of our community and others about what vaccination is, what it does, and what we should expect, right? And so we have not dispelled the myth that when you become a little under the weather, run a low-grade fever, have, pain in the site that you got the injection, or your baby is irritable for a day or two after he or she receives its vaccines, we didn't do a good job telling you what that really meant, okay? The purpose of the vaccine, any vaccine, is to allow your body to develop antibodies to a particular germ, so that, and that just does two things for you. It produces a low level amount of that antibody that sort of circulates in your bloodstream, but it also builds what are called memory cells, so that if you come into contact with that thing, measles, mumps, chickenpox, flu, COVID, that your body remembers having seen that germ, even if it saw a little bit of the germ in the vaccine. However, your body remembers it, and when it sees it again, it produces a massive antibody response and fights it off, okay? But we didn't tell y'all that, right? We said, here's the shot your baby needs to go to daycare. Put a little warm compress on the thighs tonight, right? And call us if your baby has a high fever. We didn't say we expect baby to be a little irritable because your baby's making antibodies to all the germs we're trying to protect your baby from. And in doing so, your body feels a little like sort of a bit of the hair of the dog that bit you, right? You feel crummy for a few days while your body produces this immune response. And in fact, that immune response is a good thing. It's a good sign that your body is making the antibodies needed to protect you should you run into COVID in the community. And with vaccines that require a series of doses, the point of the series of doses is one gives you a little bit of benefit. And I think in the for where the COVID vaccine is concerned, the one injection maybe protects you to 40 to 60%, let's say, and I think it may be somewhere around there. But the second dose gives you a boost, and that's where you get that 95% protected. Okay, and that's because of the amount of antibody your body produces with each dose. Okay, so based on what I've said, it's likely and quite possible, in fact, that the second dose will give you a more pronounced reaction. Okay, and depending on who you are, that might be oh, that really hurts, or oh, a little headache, or I just don't quite feel myself. It's short-lived. And if it were me, and I knew I was high risk, so once the vaccine is widely available, they're not finding you to tell you to come get it like they are for our healthcare workers and our folks in our nursing homes right now. They're finding them to get them covered, right? When we get further down the road and the vaccine is more widely available, we will then open it up to people who have chronic illnesses and want to be protected because they know they're high risk. If that were me, then I would begin having the conversation now with my employer, with my doctor. Okay. So if there is, if I needed to take a day to kind of manage my response to the vaccine, so that have some lead time. Have the conversation with your physician. Can you write me a note? How can you help me? Ask the question. There'll be mass vaccination sites, I'm sure, around some communities. There'll be an opportunity for vaccine to be provided in some communities. Ask those questions. You'll get a card or something that says, I received the Pfizer vaccine on this date. I need a second dose on this date. Right? Ask that professional. It's dialogue, it's conversation, and then be prepared to respond if your employer isn't supportive. Okay? Because let me tell you, 48 hours to me is better than the 2 weeks, 30 days or longer I've seen some folks spend in the hospital with this. Mm-hmm. And of course it beats not being able to be at work at all.
Right.
So, again, we've got time, and that's the gift here. We've got time to start shaping that up, framing those conversations. We have time as advocacy groups to talk to those who may have employers who wouldn't be supportive, and we can advocate on their behalf. right? These are the conversations that we could start having today so that no one is disenfranchised because we've got an employer that refuses to allow X or Y or Z. You know, just as we have done, you know, for other populations around other issues, we can start framing some of those conversations right now.
And if you don't mind, Dr. Wells, I have one more. This will wrap it up because I know you have 5 minutes. Please let them know if they take the virus. I think that what we're finding, thinking that once they take the vaccine card, that they cannot contract the virus. Is this true or not? And should they still wear masks and social distancing after they receive the vaccine?
So that is an important last question, and I'm glad that you asked that. So the vaccine protects against disease and not against infection. Okay, there is a difference, but it's not unlike many other vaccines that are out there. So remember, I talked about the virus and how it's released into the air by somebody who's infected, and it can, you know, get into your nasal passages, right? That's why the test is a nasal swab or an oral swab, right? Well, that can still happen if you come into contact with someone who has the illness. That can still happen. You can still breathe that in. If you've had the vaccine, however, you can be infected, so have the virus in your nasal passages and not develop disease. Huge difference, right? You're infected, just like if you get the flu vaccine, right? You could still get exposed to the flu and get a little ill with the flu even, right? Because the flu vaccine only, you know, covers 60, 70%, right? We're gonna see more than that with the COVID vaccine, but it does not prevent infection because you can still come into contact with it, right? What we are protecting against is disease, right? It is that catastrophic, you know, all over your system difficulty that we see that puts people in the hospital, that keeps people under the weather. So you must, once you're vaccinated, continue to protect yourself and protect others by wearing your mask, right? We will continue to wash our hands frequently, 20 seconds. Soap and water is the best thing. We're going to keep our distance, right? We're going to watch our distance. The 3 W's, they're still going to be there, right? We're going to wear our mask. We're going to wash our hands. We're going to watch our distance. We're going to still do that because it's going to be some months before we've got the bulk of the population vaccinated. And so that you could still get exposed, right? And so we have to recognize that those things, what it does do though, is it keeps you from living in fear that I know our healthcare workers have experienced, of taking it home to your family, of becoming critically ill, right? It's that sort of thing, that protection that we want to have happen, so we don't have to worry about you know, an illness that might end our lives, right? And that's the key. Don't throw your masks away. Okay. Keep your hand sanitizer. Keep washing your hands. Stop, you know, don't touch things that are touched by a lot of other folks. Like keep all those things in mind. This is going to be the newest tool in our toolkit and maybe the most powerful one in terms of keeping us from becoming catastrophically ill with this. And that's what we want.
Dr. Well, will you come back in the future with us to talk about not only just this issue, but other issues that affect our community?
Well, I will take that to mean that you think I did a good job, that I met your expectations. So absolutely, yes. You know, as I said, you know, I belong to you. This is, you know, your community is my community. You're the community that nurtured me and supported me, and you have a part in the MD that's behind my name. So I could do nothing less than to be sure that I'm available to you, to be sure that you and your audience has the information needed to make good decisions.
Thank you.
Thank you so much.
There's going to be other questions that go on, and we've got to, like you said, we've got to make the community more comfortable and more at ease with this vaccine, because it's important for us to take. I have a lot more questions, but I know you're on a time limit. We must get you back on. everything you said. It's right on point. And Bill, do you have anything you would like to share?
Well, she said that she thought she did a good job. I think you did a phenomenal job. I have said show after show that I would not be taking the vaccine. I think I may very well have a change of heart. I thoroughly enjoyed every second of it. Hey, that was. I saw the passion in her speech, and that moved me. And I know that I probably do need to take that vaccine.
Well, that's the thing. If I leave you with nothing else, it is, hear the heart of a physician who has watched for decades people in her own community suffer an inordinate burden of disease, and I can't remain inactive like this. We have got to get around this, and this is it. Like I don't want us to miss this. And so I appreciate those comments. And let me tell you, as we learn more, as more vaccines come to market, understand that I will always seek you out to provide you updates and be sure that you have the most up-to-date and accurate information. Because you are the trusted leaders in your community, and I want you armed with the right stuff so that you can tell all the folks who are listening to you, and hopefully assist them in getting to the answer that's best for them as well. So
thank you so much.
Thank you.
Appreciate everything. You have a good evening. Night.
Good night.
Dr. Kelly.
Yeah, Kelly.
Tice.
Wells.
Thank you, appreciate it. Well, you all, it was actually a wonderful show. But before we go, we want to talk to you a little bit about what's happened today with the package. You want to talk to them, Jerry?
Well, the Congress and Senate got together. They passed a small package of $900 billion. It's they're gonna give those people that has been lingering for 6 to 8 months or 9 months, $600. That ought to hold them over for another 9 months. The first one was $1,200, and I mean, as I have said so often, in times of crisis, this government, not the government, these representatives have failed the American people. They have been in their derelict of duty. They have fostered an atmosphere not only around this vaccine, but around the people of this country to survive. And they gave what some of the people are calling in Congress a survivor benefit, which is we know that the economy need to be infused with $3 to $4 trillion to hold the people over, to get them out of debt, to alleviate some of the student loans and all of that is affecting the economy now. But at least it's something that people maybe can eat. But if one lady said she was $6,000 behind in her rent, $6,000, and they $600. You're talking about what, 10% of the money that she need to get to save her home or shelter for herself, and $300 a week, which is it's a lifesaver, but it's not because you're never going to catch up that far behind, and still going to allow many of the landlords and rental property owners to, unless there's a moratorium in there, it's going to still allow people to be put out on the street.
Well, eventually, because this only lasts for about 3 to 4 months, and you still will end up having to pay that rent.
Because you're getting further and further behind.
But just to let them know, it's been approved. Checks will be coming out for $600. Now, from what I understand, that the $600 will come to people that receive the checks before. If you have a bank account, you should get your monies first right away. But my concern, and Jerry and I discussed this, was that people that do not have a bank account. This is what happened with the first package.
Right.
There are people that still do not receive their
Stimulus
package or the stimulus check. And so therefore, there needs to be another way for people that do not have bank accounts to receive these funds. So we're going to check on that and see if that's possible. I don't know. I did see Lumen May's name as a Facebook viewer. Thank you for watching. But maybe we can get with you and see how we can rectify that and see. I don't know if we can, but there are a lot of people that don't have bank accounts. And so we have to look at that. You'll get $300 weekly supplemental unemployment insurance, your food and rental assistance, money for schools, and some more COVID money.
Yeah, and the sad part about this is that that money comes from the American people to be put in a kitty in crisis like this, in times like this. And we are in a severe crisis where, you know, people are dying. We got around 17,000 people dead already. And it's more gonna, you know, we are looking at 2 to almost 3,000 people a day passing. They're saying 100 people an hour, some around there, 100 and some people an hour dying from this virus. And that's why we thought it was so important to have a doctor, and we're going to have more doctors in the future to come on and talk about different issues like high blood pressure that she talked about, like sugar diabetes, and what people can do to really protect themselves, and then we're going to have people come on and talk about what kind of food you need to eat to help save your life. So all of those issues we will address in the coming months. But this package that was, you know, Mitch McConnell wanted us what they call a skinny package with $500 billion, with the majority of the money going to big corporations. And at least for this time, the Democrats held ground with Mitch McConnell and the Republicans. And we have to tell who's doing this. It's Mitch McConnell and the Republicans and Donald Trump, who is have held up for 8 months something that could have helped the American people, that could have helped pull restaurants and all of that, held them over into this storm, or whichever way you want to call it, where there's some light at the end of the tunnel where we can get through the tunnel to the light. But right now, at least somebody will have something. But there are homeless people. There are people that have already been evicted from their home, millions of them that's living on the streets or in their cars or all that. They're not going to get anything because they don't have an address. They don't have no place for the money to be sent to unless they have relatives with a home or something that they can send it to. And even at that, it's still going to be.
Have a checking account.
Yeah, I know.
So even if they had a home, an address to send it to, unless they connect them to that checking account,
right. Right. So
that's a real problem.
It's a dilemma.
We're going to talk about Christmas safety. Christmas. Do y'all realize it's December 20th today? December 20th, 5 days before Christmas. And they've been warning the citizens to not participate in Christmas celebrations because of the fact of the coronavirus. So I'm hoping everybody takes heed. Wear your mask, just like Dr. Wells said. Social distance, wash your hands. We're going to, again, be with ourselves, our family. We're going to do a Zoom Christmas family meeting. Bill, what do you plan to do?
Well, yeah, I'll be right here at the house doing what I do, even if it wasn't Christmas. I like the 3 W's that she laid out for us: wear, wash, and watch your distance. I like that. Remember those 3 W's, people. It is very imperative that we maintain till we can get our vaccination.
Yes. Oh, I'm so glad. Mr. Hawkins. Mr. Hawkins.
Yes, ma'am.
Yes.
Yes, ma'am.
So how do you feel about the show? What did you take from the conversation of Dr. Wells? Because I want to share what I got from it. What did you get from it?
Well, she educated us a little bit more on the vaccine. I'm gonna have to side with Bill because I was adamant about not taking it, but now that she laid it out there and told us what's what, yeah, I won't be the first in line, but I'll get in line.
Well, she said that she wasn't going to be the first in line herself. But she also, what I really liked about what she said was when she said, even though you take that vaccine, that it doesn't stop you from contacting that virus again, but the virus will only go so far in your body. It won't ravish your body with infection if you take that vaccine. And I thought that was real powerful. There won't be any major serious complications from other effects.
Another thing she said, which is so true, that we don't participate, and we end up losing, a loss by not participating in these trials and stuff of that nature, or really having doctors to come out and explain to us on the way she did, but she has the knowledge to explain and articulate to be able to articulate what needs to be said and done, so people can understand it on a level that everybody can understand it, really, that she's reaching. So it's really good.
I think it's more than that because of the fact that our people have to have trusted leaders to let them know that they said, well, I know if Bill Snow says take that vaccine, he knows I trust him. And they would trust him even more if he took that vaccine, say for instance, on television, on our voices and so they could actually see him actually taking the shot. And you'll consider Mr. Hawkins, everybody has a center of influence. And so if we were to take it, someone said, I know if the McIntoshes take it, then I'm going to take it. But the McIntoshes are waiting, just like everyone else. I'm still waiting because I want to see the second vaccination being implemented first. But we all have a circle of influence. And I think that we need to get those people on to talk about their experience and their expertise. Go ahead.
I was going to say one of the things that's for sure, that the majority of the people are not going to get that vaccine till sometime in June, late July, maybe later than that. So that's why it's going to be imperative that we don't get comfortable and let our guards down for the next 6 to 7 months, because this is just the middle of December, but we got all the way to June or July before anybody in the general public will be taking that vaccine. It's going to be a lot of people take it, but it's going to be essential workers. It's going to be people in nursing home, what they're already doing, doctors and nurses and the people, and the caretakers, elderly. So for the general public, it's going to take a minute for us to, for people to really, for it to get down to the general public.
And wear your mask. I really want to talk about that is because you all know when you go out to these stores, what do you see? Because Dr. Wells said that the virus goes in through the nose.
Yeah, because you breathe.
Everybody heard that. But when they wear the mask, they wear the mask under their nose. So that virus can go right in. She didn't say the mouth. It could get going through the mouth. But she said the nasal. And so it's important that people wear the mask correctly. They need to wear covering their noses, not just their mouth. And I see that too many times.
Yeah, a lot of people do that, just cover their mouth.
They just cover
but
their
they
mouth.
don't realize the virus is you breathing it in through your nose.
Well, you all, let's see, we'll probably see you on Let's Talk. That's Thursday. It's Christmas Friday?
Friday.
Christmas is
Yes.
Friday. So we're gonna come with and kind of do a Christmas Eve on Let's Talk, Bill and
rest of
the group. We can say something, maybe have some more Christmas something just for our art and Facebook Live viewers. just to say Merry Christmas and Happy New Year, and to talk about how we need to help and assist the people that do not have anyone on Christmas, that's alone, what we need to do to help those individuals. So we want to say, do we have any other comments on Facebook Live, Bill, that we should discuss before we go?
Well, no, we just got Sister Ada M. Fields, Jazz Red over there in Mobile said they better get that vaccine to a rat and a monkey.
Still haven't convinced her yet. A couple more shows, and she has to see more individuals down home, what I call grassroots people, taking that.
Right.
Because Pence sitting on television taking that vaccine. Trump sitting took that vaccine. Even the Obama, Clinton, and who else was that? Bush. Those are just people that we see. We need to see our own, somebody that we know saying, okay, I want to see them.
And see if they still kicking.
Right. So when we take the vaccine, then we're going to share on the show. We're not going to take the vaccine on the show, but we'll let you know when we have the vaccine, we take the vaccine. And of course, I'm a little apprehensive. I'm still a little apprehensive, but I am going to take the vaccine when it's my time. But by the time it's my time, I will see that second shot being administered.
Let me say this. I know one of the things we're gonna do in the next show, which will be Sunday. We're doing the show Thursday. Let's talk Thursday. On a community conversation, we're gonna talk about cybersecurity, because people don't realize what danger we are in at this time. Not only are we in danger with the virus, but our national security is at stake. And we get the Russians really took over all of our programs here. You know, they could shut down lights, hospitals, everything else with this cyber security risk that we have in the country. So we're going to address that, and we're going to talk about some of the things that I've looked at. So we're going to talk about that on Sunday on Community Conversation.
All right, y'all. Well, thank you again, Neil, one of our top hosts, and Mr. Hawkins, Mayor Hawkins. You're awesome. Missed seeing your face today. Well, heard your voice, so that was good. Mr. Hawkins.
Thank you. Yes, ma'am. Thank you.
All right, then. With that, we're going to say good night, you all.
Good night.
Good night, everybody.
Good night. Good night.